I'm Gwen Eiffel, and this is the Washington Week Webcast Extra. I'm joined by Doyle McManus of the Los Angeles Times, Nancy Youssef of McClatchy Newspapers, Pete Williams of NBC News, and Karen Tumulty of Time Magazine. That's why I like Knight Ridder better than McClatchy. I can say it better. It's easier. First question's from Mary Ann in Columbus, who writes, waking up to the news about Iran building another nuclear plant is disturbing. Realistically, what can the U.S. and other nations do to shut it down? Aren't sanctions kind of like rules made to be broken?
Yeah, unless you make the sanctions bite, and that is going to be the great task for the United States and its allies over the next several years. Now, if it helps any, that plant wasn't up and running. That plant didn't have the centrifuges in it. It was a bunch of tunnels in a mountain. So, as far as we know, it had not yet increased Iran's actual ability to produce nuclear fuel. But the question on sanctions is exactly at the center of this whole problem. You're going to see a debate over which sanctions to impose, how to impose them. Will the UN do tough sanctions? Probably not. It'll probably be the United States and the EU. All sanctions are porous. And in the end, it really comes down to the question of how will the Iranian political system behave under economic pressure, and we don't know how it behaves under normal circumstances.
This is a good point, or Afghanistan either for that matter. David writes from Cincinnati, this is an Ohio theme here, what is the relationship between Taliban terrorists and al-Qaeda? Are they working together to recruit people like the alleged Colorado terrorist Najibullah Zazi to attack Americans, or are they more focused on having control of Iraq and Afghanistan?
You know, it's a great question, and it's a marriage of convenience, ultimately. I think there's some tension. You can imagine there would be if you're the Taliban. Because of al-Qaeda, they lost control of Afghanistan. But they still work together because they do have a sort of shared grand interest. But the difference is the Taliban has one central goal, and that's controlling Afghanistan again. Al-Qaeda has a much broader goal, the spreading of an Islamic State throughout the world, the destruction of the Western world. And so that's where these ideas collide. So when they can help each other out, they do. And when they can't, they don't, and so it's a push-pull that's constantly happening. From the U.S. military's perspective, though, it is a relationship that is an imminent threat to the United States if the Taliban is allowed to regain control in Afghanistan.
Kevin in Houston writes, I support reforming health care, but have to agree with Senator Snowe. What's the rush? We have Democrats put a clock on getting this done before the end of the year, Why have Democrats put a clock on getting this done before the end of the year other than to bolster their position before the next election?
Well, it is the next election is very much part of it. I think the sense is that if they don't get it done this year, they're never going to get it done in an election year. And they recall, too, that Bill Clinton waited into the second year of his presidency, and we all know what happened then, both to the health care reform effort and to the Congress.
I have to actually go back to another question well, I wanted to direct that Najibullah Zazi question to you as well, Pete, because when Nancy just explained very clearly what the connection is of convenience between Taliban and al-Qaeda. But what is the connection between someone like Zazi and al-Qaeda, really? Since al-Qaeda isn't like a club that you pay to join.
No, what we don't know is what the connection is ultimately between bin Laden and this guy. We don't know whether, we know he has admitted going to a training camp run by al-Qaeda and meeting with al-Qaeda operatives in Pakistan. Now, how many times removed are the operatives from what they call al-Qaeda Central and bin Laden himself? I think we don't know that. But picking up on your point, many people who have been following this case say, you know, if the U.S. pulls out of Afghanistan and it goes back into the hands of the Taliban, you won't just have al-Qaeda training camps in Pakistan. You'll have them in Afghanistan, too, and the problem will only get worse.
Evelyn from Louisville writes, there continue to be questions about President Karzai's re-election, even as the White House and the Pentagon square off over troop levels. Why aren't we hearing more from President Karzai about what he wants to see in terms of strategy in his country?
Well, he said a little bit. I mean, he's declared himself the winner several times over.
That's all he needs to say, really.
Right? And he said that he wants more troops. You know, the truth is, to win the election, or steal it, depending on your perspective, he made a lot of deals with a lot of people, including the warlords. And to be frank, I don't think the United States is as big a priority for him. He has to settle those scores with the warlords first, and the United States falls secondary to that. So He speaks up when it's in his interest to do so. But I don't think he has a vested interest one way or the other except to hold on to power. And that's the prism in which he looks at everything.
And Doyle, we see that Stanley McChrystal is going to be on 60 Minutes this weekend. Is there are we about to see the next Obamathon, another person getting out there and trying to sell his story?
Obamathon, or actually what the gossip is in the Pentagon and the military is Stan McChrystal, the next Dave Petraeus. And there's a very interesting undercurrent on that, because there are an awful lot of people in the military hierarchy who weren't all that happy that Dave Petraeus got to be the most famous, most beloved general in America. There are people saying that General Petraeus may run for president, and so I'm not sure how happy Secretary Gates and even President Obama are about the idea of General McChrystal getting all this airtime. But I'll bet you're going to hear him be pretty moderate and not get out there too far in front of his president yet.
He has seen that this president has been known to fire our commanders before, so maybe not so much.
Seems like a pretty careful guy.
We are out of time. Send your questions to Washington Week at pbs.org. And